I didn't do. Can anybody tell me just what I did? I'm all alone and I'm so confused. Once I won and everyone wants me to be. I only know just how to be. Once I was the ape of the hour, the cover coward, the absolute zero. I'm nobody's hero. So it has been a while since I made a video talking about Rekieta retardation, talking about Nick Rekeita, the lawyer. Wait, what? Alexa, stop. Really, Alexa, stop. Oh, fuck, hang on. Yeah, Michael Jackson came on. Okay, it's been a while since I've talked about Nick Rekeita and the situation revolving around his decline and his fall from grace and like his relationships with other people. And it's not that I haven't had anything to say because I've been following along with it casually. I've been like reading Kiwi Farms. I've been watching the occasional Alyssa clips. I've been seeing like the decline in real time. I've been seeing like more and more people like spurred out over Drexel. Null has officially turned on Rekieta. He has stopped being a nose guard. He has become part of the Cody crew. He's become a believer in Rekieta retardation. He is going up against Nick Rekieta, like speaking out against his nonsense, speaking out about like his behavior in all year long, behaving like talking about like all this stuff. And it does feel like that is the major shift that's happened over the past couple of months is that like Null, who was I think the only major obstacle in preventing Rekieta from being seen as a full-on lol cow, has officially flipped. He has gone full tilt on like criticizing Rekieta, criticizing his methods, like his snakery, like his disingenuous behavior, and is more willing to like openly talk about him on Mad on the Internet. Like no longer is he doing that thing he did where like he's sitting there like at his desk in whatever in like Ukraine or whatever the fuck wherever he is. Like no longer is he sitting there trying to tell us that like Nick, I don't want to talk about Rekieta, guys. It's just not funny. There's nothing going on that's interesting. Meanwhile, there's all this crazy shit, like allegations about Drexel, like Nick making up with Ralph, like Dick Masterson and Vito being involved in like pedophile allegations. Vito, I think, is like proven to be an open pedophile. I don't know anything about the situation, but like, like things involving Nick's inner circle are like collapsing, Like there's speculation right now that like his wife is getting ready to like cheat on him right now, that she's dropped like 2 sizes, that she's losing a bunch of weight so she can go cuck him, right? That is the implication that is the theory on Kiwi Farms right now, is that like all this crazy stuff is going down, and only now is Null speaking out against it. Only now is he coming out and saying that like, oh man, guys, this is getting kind of out of hand. Rekieta was kind of mean to me. Like he took what I said out of context, and I don't like it. Like, okay, well, welcome to the club, buddy. I don't know. Like I've spoken up about Null's behavior in the past. I do think this is kind of an example as to why going forward the community of like I don't know, I don't want to call them the Kiwi Farms community, but like the community at large, the sector should not take Null seriously, because we've seen this happen several times where he will protect targets. If someone like has any if he has something to gain by protecting someone, like he had to gain from protecting Rekieta, because Rekieta gave him so much credibility. Like he will go out to bat for them. He will defend them. He will like utilize his resources to convince the farms that like nothing's going on here, nothing is amiss, nothing about this is weird or funny or interesting. I'm not going to talk about it on my show, but like I think more and more people like understand that like Null is a biased source, that he isn't like some kind of neutral, just like chaotic kind of like merely just some figurehead for like a completely independent website. Like no, Null's opinions and like his what he does do have a lot of sway into the sector, right? They do have a lot of sway in the sphere, and we saw this like for for the first big portion of Rekieta retardation, right? The first big, like when Rekieta's decline first started, like Null was damage controlling Nick Rekieta. Like he was damage controlling the situation. He was trying to to find things to, like, trying to like downplay the situation and pretend that like Nick was still like he didn't need to pull up. He was doing everything. He was doing everything he needed to do to succeed. When really, like, the signs that things were going south were there for like a really long time. Like I would argue, like as early as like 2019, right? Like I've spoken out about this for a long time. I've been like alluding to like how I didn't like how the Vic Mignogna GoFundMe was handled. I didn't like the Ty Beard being on the show all that much. I didn't like how he covered the show in general. Like, why exactly are we bullying people involved in the case instead of like letting the lawyers take care of it, right? Like, what? Why exactly are we doing this? Like, it just made no sense at all, right? From any perspective, and like it really, right from the get go, was kind of a red flag that like something was up. Like at the time I was like kind of like, okay, maybe he's just getting carried away, maybe like he's just like towing the line a little bit, maybe like it needs to happen because of like this specific situation. But like as I've seen him just like spurg out more and more like all these different people for like really no reason, like defending like truly reprehensible people, Dick and Vito, Ethan Ralph, and especially like his best friend Drexel, like I become more and more convinced that like Nick Rekieta is truly a reprehensible person. And I do think like the Drexel thing is like the most obvious example of this, because this is someone that he knows personally, someone he's known for a long time, someone who's like he's intimately involved with. They talk about like cuckoldry together all the time, right? Like, and, it was a meme for a long time that like Drexel was fucking Nick's wife. So it's not it's not a new thing to criticize Drexel. Like that's kind of been the thing that's I would say that was the thing that really got a lot of people like question Nick and his like morality, is like having this complete degenerate on his show on a regular basis, coming in here talking about porn, talking about like his gangbangs, talking about like things that thoughts do behind closed doors, talking about like his background and stuff like that, bragging about some of the things he's done, whether or not it like was ethical or not. Like it was a red flag that something was up, like right from the get go. And at the time, I think a lot of people were just trying to write it off, or trying to make excuses for it. But or if like anybody saw through it, they just kind of left, and like it never really caught on, right? Like it was like a little tidbits here and there, like a rape fantasy here, a sci-fi dystopia here, like an interaction with a thought here, like by the way, Drexel groomed a 13-year-old girl, right? Like, oh man, her mom was so upset. Like little things like that that really made people like eventually just become really turned off from the show. But it did last a long while, right? Like I think a lot of people don't realize this is like how long this stuff was actually going on. Because like I don't think Drexel got any heat until like Rekieta's decline started, right? So people knew about like the grooming thing. People knew this happened. Like he bragged about it, I think 2020, 2021, something like that. Like I would say it was around 2020, right? 2019, like maybe late 2019. Like there was um there was a we knew it happened, right? But like Nick was in the room with him, right? Nick was laughing about it. Drexel was laughing about it. Like the way they made it sound is that like, oh man, I knew this chick. Like I met this chick when she was 13, and then like, oh, and then I had sex with her when she was an adult. And you're just like, okay, well, what's the context of this? Like, did you like how old were you? How like were you around her all the time? Like it took a while for like the pieces to kind of all come together, that like he was in his 30s, like he met this chick, he manipulated her into having sex with him at a BDSM club. Like it took a while for like all the pieces to like come together. And like, Drexel like denies this. Even now he's in denial about this, that like he groomed this chick, but like everybody knows this is what happened, right? Like we know too much about he's given too much away about the situation, about the ages involved, like when this happened, that like we know he's a groomer, right? And what's more is Rekieta knows that he's a groomer, right? Like this is the thing that really upset me about like the Nick spurging out about Null thing, right? This is the thing that really got me like fired up about it, like made me really want to talk about it because Nick is like sitting there trying to tell us that like, oh no, Drexel didn't do that. Oh, I know him. I I didn't know anything about this, like with a 13-year-old girl and this and that and that. Like he's like trying to sit there like making excuses for Drexel, right? He's trying to cover for him. And you'll notice this a lot. They kind of had like this, I call it like a symbiotic like relationship where like they cover for each other's degeneracy. Like Drexel tries to say that like being obsessed with like Kuming is like normal, and then the Rekieta tries to do this thing where like he presents Drexel as this like nice upstanding person, this great guy, when really he's like a complete piece of shit. Like it's an interesting dynamic, and it's probably the reason why they've stuck together so long. Is that like most people would never tolerate these guys' the bullshit that these guys come up with at the same time. But like, yeah, like Nick is sitting here, he's like, yeah, I didn't know about this. Like, I don't know. Like, Drex isn't going out like gang banging like married women all the time. Like, that's in the past, man. Like, he's sitting there like trying to make excuses for Drexel, trying to find something that sticks. But like, okay, like if Drexel really stopped like gang banging, like if he really stopped, like it happened in like the last 3 years or so, like because we have like plenty of evidence that he was doing it in like 2019 and 2018 and stuff like that. Like like maybe not to the extent he was in college. I think he like even admitted that. Like he was like doing that stuff in like his 20s, and then like he had to scale back when his daughter was born because he had obligations now. But like that's normal, right? Like you stop having as much sex when you're older. Like that's not anything unusual, right? Like I don't believe for a second that like Drexel has like really scaled back like his behavior, right? Like I do think in a lot of ways he's still going out, he's still manipulating these thoughts, he's still like grooming people, he's still being involved in all this shady stuff, even if he knows that he can't get away with like bragging about it openly anymore. And like you have to keep in mind, like the 13-year-old girl isn't necessarily like the end all be all to this. Like that is just the things we know about, right? Like what other things has he done that he doesn't really think about or remember all that clearly, that he just does on base instinct and doesn't really like acknowledge at all? Like I can tell you, like one of the things I noticed is that like he like he has sex with his women. He has sex with these women and like doesn't really care about them at all. He doesn't respect them. He doesn't do any like he just has this like mindset like, oh, I'm just gonna have sex and then I'm gonna smash and then I'm gonna dash, right? And it's just like, aren't you the problem when it comes to these thoughts and horrors, right? Like he's always complaining about like these how the way women behave and how they're not loyal and stuff like that, but like are, aren't you the problem? Like, aren't you the aren't you like the person creating these kind of people? And like he'll try to justify it. He'll try to write it off as being like, oh man, they're like this no matter what. I'm just taking advantage of them. Like he just tries like he does this thing where he tries like to say that like, oh, it is what it is, Nick. Like he just tries to make excuses for his behavior. And Rekieta always has tried to enable him, right? He's tried damage controlling for him. He's tried like protecting his reputation. He's tried like doing everything he can to like get people to stop talking about what a groomer he is, and the whole 13-year-old girl thing. Like I'm sure there's a lot of things that like in older live streams that like people have not found. I was the one who pulled up that whole like dystopian sci-fi utopia thing. That's the thing I always fixate on, where I realize just how deranged of an individual he actually is. And like I realized that like I actually found a there was the one clip that like Huey Farms found when I brought it up. There's actually another one. He brought it up like he's brought it up a couple of times. So it's something like he clearly thinks like he clearly thinks has like a possibility of happening, which is just absurd. Like his obsession with like sex robots and like, oh, women, the artificial womb is gonna replace women, Nick. Like it's just not gonna happen. Okay, it's such a weird, like depraved, like delusional behavior he has, where like he just like constantly tries to justify his behavior and how he handles how he conducts himself around other people. Like I have seen him like on camera. Like I've been trying to find this clip for the longest time. I should probably like try to find it tonight. But like I've seen him on camera. Like it was like the night after like Nick got really sick or something, and he's sitting there with like one of the guests. I want to say it was Dollhouse Phil, but I don't remember. He's just like, yeah, man, I had to sit here. I had to. Nick passed out drunk, so I had to sit here and read super chats for him. And I stole his show, I stole his house, I stole his wife, and it's like you really get this sense like when Nick's not in the room, he really doesn't respect him at all, right? Like it's crazy that like he would outright like say something like that on a stream, like in front of like probably a couple of thousand people, right? Like crazy that he would like even suggest something like that, right? Like that's just crazy. I hope someone can find that clip. By the way, that's been something I've been wanting to find for a long time, but I've never been able to dig it up. Like it's just one of those things. There are so many like wild moments out there. You really can't pick them out. Like you have to go through like hours and hours of content, and like nobody has time for that. It's just crazy. But like the cracks are starting to show for both of them, right? Like people know that like Drexel can't be taken seriously, that he's not some guru of like female sexuality, that he's not some like pickup artist. Well, okay, he really does have that like pickup culture, like pickup artist like culture around him. Like dudes, like I imagine this is like most of his male friends, like people who surround himself themselves with people like Drexel, like think that if they're around him enough, that they'll be able to smash more, right? Like I think that's probably a big reason why Rekieta like thinks so highly of him and why like he wants him in his life so much is that like he desperately wants to live the Drexel lifestyle, or at least like the Drexel lifestyle as like Drex likes to uh, explain it, right? Like how he like tries to hype it up because anyone who's like been around these people know like they know how miserable it is. They know how like broken everybody involved is. They know that like the sex isn't great, the women aren't attractive, like fucking gangbangs are stupid. Like the entire idea is just ridiculous. But like people like Drexel like won't admit it because gangbanging, the lifestyle is like such an integral part of his identity. He wouldn't know what to do with himself without it, right? And that's kind of the issue, right? Like he has no identity outside of like banging thoughts, right? Like everything he does just amounts to that specific thing, right? It's really pathetic. It really is. But I think what's more pathetic is Rekieta's obsession with it. Like his obsession, like his opinion, like his secret like desire to be just like his best friend Drexel, right? To put on the blackface for real, to have it like permanently etched into his skin and like be be the black bull, right? Instead of like the little white boy cuck that he is in reality, right? Like that is I think like was at one point like Rekieta's deepest desire, and now like I think he's like now experimenting with like cuckoldry, and now there's like all these behind the scenes issues. Like we don't know for sure like what's going on in the house and like what's going on with these people, but like we have a pretty good idea, right? We have a pretty good idea, and it does not look good. Going by what I've seen, going by what other people have seen, going by like the speculation that's based on like the things we know, like things are not looking positive, and I really have to wonder just how things are going to crash, like how they're going to fall apart. I do think that like Kayla leaving, his wife leaving, is going to be a major instigator, but I have to wonder like what's going to happen after that because Rekieta is a full time streamer. He is completely reliant on donations, super chats, and views to sustain his income, and I think we might see like an unprecedented like just collapse of like such a high profile YouTube channel. I haven't seen like a collapse this hardcore ever, honestly. Like when I first started talking about Nick in 2019, like I I really didn't think it would collapse this way. Like I thought it would be like a slow decline if he like kept doing what he was doing, but he couldn't do that. He couldn't stick to like his routine. He couldn't like find a formula that worked. Like he just goes on every day, complains about nonsense, and people still give him views and still give him money. Like for now, but it is going to dwindle. Like his star is going to fall. Like Wings of Redemption was making like $100,000 a month, like back in the day, right? Well, no, $10,000 a month, right? Excuse me, $10,000 a month back in the day, right? That was like life changing money for him, and he's dropped down to like what, less than 20,000. like he's living a miserable life right now, right? And I think Nick is kind of going down the same path. Like he hasn't done anything to really take care of himself, take care of his family, take care of his relationship with other people, like maintain his business. Like he's just allowed himself to become an alcoholic, like an addict who just sits in his house all day alone and just whines about like anime Matsuri being mean to him or like things people have said to him or like damage controlling for Drexel or like trying to like low key criticize Null and the Kiwi Farms, like trying desperately to like salvage his reputation, but it is never coming back. That genie is never going back in the bottle, right? Nobody is going to take Nick Rekieta seriously ever again, and he absolutely deserves it.